Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest and I live here in Austin, Texas. I've had the gift of sobriety since December the 27th of 1972. I know for many that's back in the dark ages, and they got pretty dark for me too. So I'm with you on that one. The purpose of these podcasts is to kind of go deeper into the history, the spirituality, the psychology, kind of really do a deeper dive into what recovery is about, and with the aim of trying to help people who struggle with it or got bored with it, you know? So we're trying to catch two groups, and I think that's what from hearing from people, that's who we seem to be catching, you know? So encourage you to go to our website. It's titled Two-Way Prayer, and I'd encourage you to go to my guest's website also. It is titled stepstudy.com. And there's a link to that in the show notes to this. While you're on my website, Two-Way Prayer, sign up for the newsletter, getting ready to send one out towards the end of this month. And watch the video there. It's on the unique form of prayer called Two-Way Prayer that came to us through the Oxford group and somehow got lost between Akron and New York somewhere in the early days. And give that a look, and maybe more important, give it a shot. I think it's a lot of people are finding it very exciting. It's a new way of relating to the divine. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this particular episode. My guest is Dr. James Ryan. James is an old friend. We go back a ways. He's had an interesting journey. Episode 1, he shares that journey with you all. He was always interested in writing, and then into recovery. And his question became, how can recovery benefit through various writing techniques? He went back to school, got his PhD. His dissertation turned into a book, much like Ernie Kurtz did many years ago, with his dissertation becoming a more popular way of looking at it. James, it's good to have you back. I'm having fun with this series. I hope you are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to be here, Bill.
Cool. Now, in your research, you said you came across 4 major areas, and that's what we're discussing right now. 4 major areas that were impacted or could be impacted significantly by paying more attention to writing. And in the last episode, we took a deep dive into honesty, because you said that's one of the first areas that that we tackle. Tell us what the remaining 3 are briefly, and then we'll dive into number 2.
Sure. Yeah. So the remaining 3 big areas that people said when I asked, how is writing helpful to you in your recovery? They said these 4 things. It was honesty, and then it was writing helps me get in contact with a higher power. Writing transforms my relationships. And writing is something I can use or something I can do to help others.
Okay, so we got 2 more episodes to go on number 3 and 4, but on the second one, that's what we're going to be exploring here. And in reflecting on it, I think it may be one of the most important episodes. At least I hope it turns out that way, because it's a problem. So many people, the big book was written, 1938, published in 39. It was a different time then. And even back then, there was a struggle going on with how much Christian stuff do we put in this? How much spiritual stuff do we put in this? Make room for the agnostics, for the atheists. It was a broad approach. And it's interesting. It kind of goes back and forth. You've worked with young people. You're working with young people today. In your research, did you see some problems, particularly in this area where writing was helpful?
Yes, absolutely. I found this in my own experience, and I found it in the people that I talked to. There's a lot of us that come into the program with a good, like I described in my first, in my story, there was a good degree of religious shame and religious trauma in my family system. I was a church dropout from the evangelical world. And when I showed up in recovery rooms and they started talking about God, it raised a bunch of red flags for me. Said, I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. I don't want anything to do with that stuff. I know what that's about, right? Very cynical,
Right.
very.
And I walked away from that.
And I walked away from that. So why would I walk right back into it? That'd be dumb, right?
Right.
And there's lots of people like that have, varying degrees of trauma and even abuse related with their religious background. So it can be very, very tough to think about this as a spiritual program, or to even wrap your head around, like, what is this going to be like to relate to something bigger than me? Is that even something I want to do? Right.
Yeah. And this is where the whole thing of images, this is one of your first points, your first findings in the study, that writing can help one with determining what image is it that I'm going to make an attempt to relate to.
Yeah.
And is it safe?
Right.
Is it safe?
Right. Before we go into images, I want to say there's at least two kinds of problems that people have coming into the steps with regards to religious imagery or with regards to religious background. And one is what I described already. We're traumatized, we're full of shame, we're resistant, we got this wall up about religious stuff. No thanks, right?
Right.
And then there's another group. I mean, there's some people who have like no exposure at all, which is kind of amazing, but they just kind of...
It's easier for them, the book says.
I think so, right? You start with a fresh slate.
That's been my experience too.
Yeah, right.
You don't have to get over something to get into something.
Right, yeah. Then there's this third group, though, that's like very, very committed to a particular religious perspective still. And it's almost invariably not a very healthy one. Right? It's sort of like, I grew up in a bunch of shame and religious trauma. There's people who are still in that, and they're drinking or they're getting high or they're crazy in their sex lives or whatever it is, but they're still committed to that perspective and that point of view and that idea of God. And so, I mean, I guess there's probably degrees of that where there's people who are just religious people, but their private lives are like way out of whack with what they think it should be religiously. But for whatever reason, their relationship with God, their understanding of God is not one that's connecting in a way that helps them stay sober, for example, right? So there's something going on there that can also be a barrier, right? Your overcommitment to certain ideas. Go ahead, you got something.
Well, yeah, and that the book says is one of the primary purposes of the book, to allow you to make that connection possible, to make it be a reality.
Yeah.
Understanding. See, I always thought that chapter that said we agnostics was not to a particular group of people. I think it's to everybody.
Yeah.
That's the way I always approached it.
Right.
But
that's definitely a shift in your frame of mind. If you're coming in like, I believe X, Y, and Z is the truth. Now we're going to have to shift into, well, I have to be a little more loose with my ideas because the ones that I've got, they're not keeping me sober. I need to have a new relationship. And a new relationship means things are going to have to change. And that means I have to let go of some of the old understandings and the old way of relating to higher power. Right.
Right. Yeah. That's what the book says. Many of us tried to hold on to our old ideas. Results were nil till we let go absolutely. And one of those big items to often let go of is my own concept of God.
And that's true for both groups. That's true for people like me who come in and we're like, no way, no thanks. And it's also true for people who are super committed to some particular way. Right?
That's right. I'm with you. Good
scary for everybody. It's scary for everybody.
Good rabbit hole. Yeah, we needed to go down that one.
All right. So with that understanding, we all come in, we need some kind of, we hit step 2. Step 2 says we're gonna came to believe in a power greater than ourselves that can restore us to sanity, right?
Right.
There's a number of ways to approach that. The way I did was, my sponsor said, you don't have to believe anything. Don't worry about beliefs. Don't worry about any of that. Just bring your doubts to the table. Try on this stuff. See what happens to you, and let your understanding come out of that, right? Sort of an experiment, okay? For other people, and especially some of the people I interviewed, there was more of a process of feeling like I need to kind of wrap my head around this thing somehow before I go in,
Right. Okay.
If I'm going to believe in something, then I have to believe in something. It has to be a thing that I can believe in. So what's that thing going to be? What's that image of God going to be that I'm going to relate to as I go through this process? Right.
Over my many years, what I've come to is it's probably going to be wrong,
Yeah.
but it still may be necessary.
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
line, I don't know who said, God created man in his image,
Mhm.
and then man returned the favor.
Right.
So
Right.
we project onto God
Mhm.
images that are at work within some of the deepest parts of ourselves.
Right.
And it's also affected by our culture.
Right. Right.
Hugely.
Yes, absolutely.
And the culture's in chaos right now.
That's true.
It's coming apart. It's coming
That's
apart.
true. That's true. We're more
And it's got to
polarized
come
than
back together.
Mhm.
Some writers some theology writers says like every 500 years it falls apart,
Mm.
and then has to be put back together again. And we're in one of those 500 years periods
Yeah.
where there's a lot of chaos out there,
Right.
and we're kind of take some of these concepts and put them together in a way that fits the more modern mind. So the image, the
The image, yeah, yeah. One thing to point out is that there's a sort of a bracketing that has to happen. Like I came into the program with an existing image of God,
Yes,
and it was the thing I rejected, right?
right. Yeah,
Or you might have the thing you're hanging on to, whatever it is. We have to kind of put the existing image in brackets and say, maybe that's true, maybe that's not. It's not helpful right now,
yeah.
and we're going to open up to something new. And then there's a sort of a process of figuring out what that is. I guess I'll tell a couple stories about this.
Okay, stories are
That's all
good.
right. And one sort of exemplifies like a figuring it out process, which I think is not great. And another one is more of a feeling it out process, which I think is better. Okay.
I agree. Yeah, I'm with
Yeah.
you.
So figuring it out, this is someone that I know who got into recovery. They hit step 2. They're like, okay, I'm going to believe in something. I need to figure out something that makes sense, a sensible, rational, higher power for myself,
Mhm.
something that I can believe in without feeling stupid. So they would sit down and they would, journal, and they would write, and they would think, and they would, theologize and try to assemble some kind of thing, and cross things out and revise. And by the end of the day, they'd have some kind of a picture of God that they thought, okay, that's pretty solid. That stands up to my scrutiny, and that seems good. And they'd wake up the next morning and read what they'd written and say, no, I can't believe in that God. And they repeated the cycle a bunch of times, and then called me to say, like, well, I can't do it. I can't pass step 2. There's no way. I can't figure out a higher power that I could possibly believe in. And of course, the problem there is that, of course, you can't figure out a higher power that you can believe in. There's no, like, if we're looking for a higher power, it has to be something by definition that transcends our reason, right? If it's just going to be a product of my best thinking, then we already know what that looks like. It looks like me in a mess, right?
Mm-hmm.
So figuring it out is not a great way. Using not that you have to throw logic and reason into the garbage, but like it's not going to help you come up with the higher power that you need, right? So the second process is feeling it out, and that means starting from the place of your felt need for something more powerful than you,
Mm-hmm.
and letting that sort of shape your first understanding of what this power could be.
Is there anything beyond me?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
And the place that you're going to answer that question or start to answer that question is in the place where you need something that's beyond you. Right.
Right.
So
In my mind,
yeah,
because my mind is contaminated with addiction.
Right.
And that's really my problem. That's really my problem. My thinking is my problem. What's going on in my head is my problem.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anybody else in there?
Right. So if I get out of my brain, I sink down into the body and feel what I need. That's going to come up with something else. An exercise that one of the people I talked to shared with me is called the want ad for a higher power. And I think it actually does this pretty well. A want ad for a higher power is exactly what it sounds like. It's like you're going to advertise in the LA Times. You're going to say, wanted, higher power, pays the salary, must have the following qualifications, right? Okay. This is what you need, and please apply by whatever. Essentially, the essence of it is that you're writing a list of things you need higher power to be, a list of things you need God to be. Mm-hmm. And if each of those ones is a statement, not just of what the image of God should be, but of something that's happening inside you that needs that thing, that is about as good a picture of higher power as you can get, at least to start out.
Which is an often neglected part of inventory, isn't it? What are the deeper parts of me? Not just what I've done, but what I feel inside. Yeah. The angst, the anxiety, the self-destructiveness, some of those things that get down to the core.
Right.
Yeah, I need help with this.
Right.
Outside of my own mind. That's the key.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Outside of the ego.
Yeah. An example of this is like the person who told me about this this one ad said that hers, she wrote one, and she said it was sort of like the best quality. She couldn't love herself, and so she needed something that was infinitely loving, right? And the image that came to her was of the best parts of her mom minus the worst parts of her mom. Okay, the sort of maternal, caring, those parts of her mom that she was able to get, right? So she needed that, and she needed that in kind of a cosmic big way, because she needed something that could love her and know her in ways that she couldn't do that for herself. And then there was, she didn't have strength to get through a day sober. She didn't have power to do that.
Right.
And so she needed something really strong. And for her, that meant Gladriel from Lord of the Rings, okay? That was a powerful female figure who could take on big evil and be protective, right? So someone that was at once super badass and strong and super loving and caring, okay? That was her higher power. Those were the qualities that she listed, and they reflected the deep need that she had to be loved and to be protected and to be carried through. If you can get to that, you can get to something you can surrender to, and you can surrender from a place that's really connecting with some core stuff.
Or even align with. I hate that word surrender.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I really hate it.
Yeah, that's right.
But align with.
Yeah.
Access into me.
Right.
Yes, a channel.
Sure. We can say like opening up and receiving.
Exactly.
Something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But making that gesture of openness towards a higher power from a place of really deeply felt need, and that can carry you forward into some powerful stuff. So that's a little bit about
I was looking at this. James sent me some notes on this in advance, and I was reflecting on this image. And one of the things that came to my mind was the four absolutes, because people have struggled with this for ever since time immemorial. I mean, it's and it's more difficult now, but going back to the turn of the 20th century, hey, that this God, whoever this God is honest, is pure, is unselfish, and is loving.
Right.
And interestingly, if I were to add a fifth, it would be what that woman was looking for: courageous. Because courage is called for in this process.
Yeah.
But if I honesty to come into my life, purity, unselfishness, and above all, love.
Yeah.
And I'm going to relate to love. I'm going to write to love. I'm going to receive guidance and nurturing from universal love that is personified in some way.
Yeah.
And again, I'm real comfortable with my beliefs are wrong. I mean, I'm there. I was talking to a woman this morning exactly on this subject.
Yeah.
That being human, we have to have an image,
Mhm.
but to understand God, I mean, come on.
Right. It's not gonna happen.
But you can experience these qualities. So
Right.
in this writing, that's what she's doing. These
Mhm.
are the qualities, the internal qualities that I need access to because I don't have them.
Right. Right. They're not in me. I
They're
need to get
not
them
in
from
me.
somewhere else.
That's right.
And you're starting to feel forward into what does that look like then? And it looks
Which
like,
is really kind of going back to step one.
yeah,
In a
yeah,
deeper way, what the hell
right,
does unmanageability mean?
right,
Come face
right.
to face with that ego
Hmm.
versus the divine, the beyond,
Yeah,
the whatever with a capital W.
I'm all on board with that.
Yeah.
Some people sort of say, I'm powerless over alcohol, and that's it, buddy. That's as far as we're going. And I don't think that's really reflects what the program has to say or
Well,
offer, right?
let me go down a rabbit hole because
Yeah.
I would disagree with that
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
because I think when they use the word powerless,
Yeah.
this is just me, and I say
Yeah.
I'm powerless over alcohol. I had better pay really close attention to that
Sure.
and not say I'm also powerless over people, places, and things.
Okay.
I
Sure.
want to reserve that. It's like if I were allergic to penicillin. I
Uh-huh.
damn well better know that I'm powerless over penicillin in a way that I am not powerless over other things.
So you take the unmanageability to be the other category.
Absolutely the
All right.
most misunderstood
I can get behind
part
that.
of the program.
Right.
And that's where the ego really runs up against the divine.
Uh-huh. Is it?
Who's in charge?
Sure. Sure. In
You
any
know,
case, yeah. I can see
and
where you
it
come
may be
from
semantics, but
a little bit.
yeah,
The core experience is I need something that I can't do. And when it comes to unmanageability, that's certainly true, right? I need something, I can't provide it for myself.
and the depth of that is phenomenal.
Right. Right.
What I
So
was told, when I
yeah.
was here, here's the way I was told many years ago. My sponsor said, "Bill, you can understand what powerlessness means. You can get that.
Mhm.
You're powerless over alcohol,
Yeah.
right? The depth of an unmanageable life
Uh,
that you will struggle with all your life.
for sure, because there's no limit to that.
There's no limit to that, and it really gets to the linkage that we're talking about here
Yeah.
on how writing can connect us with that other part that is missing and necessary and has to be accessed in some way, especially if you're a drunk or an addict.
Mm-hmm.
You got a
Mm-hmm.
real burning need for this to happen. It's not an academic exercise.
No, right. It's
Yeah,
not. It's not an intellectual exercise, and it should
right,
it should always come from that place of felt need.
right.
Um,
And that's what
I
that
mean,
woman
just
is doing. She's doing that in the thing. This is the emptiness in me
yeah,
that needs to be filled.
yeah. She said something really interesting too. Once she told me about best qualities of mom plus Gladriel from Lord of the Rings, powerful but also loving. This
Yeah,
is the higher power I need because it comes from this place of what I okay.
right.
She then said, "Well," I said, is that your image of higher power now?" And she said, "No, that was sort of like the working title for a song that you're writing,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
You're working on a song and you call it something because you don't know what to call it yet, and when you publish it, then you have a real title.
Right. Gotcha.
So you're just using it for now.
She knew it was a work in progress,
A work in progress. That's what she's getting at. Yeah.
which is good. Merton said if your ideas of God
Yeah.
are the same 5 years from now,
You're
you
in
ain't
trouble.
growing.
That's right.
You're not growing.
Right. Right.
So she was onto something.
She was on something great because if you can start with an image that comes from your need, then you can really get access to something. And if you don't hold on to that image too tightly,
Right.
then your experience of whatever that thing is filling the need, it can start to grow. And she said that what kind of replaced that image was, she called, I forgot what she said, but it was like a felt sense in her body of God's presence.
Exactly. That's
like something's
experience.
here with
That's
me.
experience.
Right. And that then says your ideas, I mean, they don't matter that much.
Boy, that's going to put a dent in some 12-step meetings, isn't it? Well, let me tell you what I think.
Yeah, right. Your ideas they're great, and
They're
if
nice.
they're coming
They're
from a
nice.
place of need, then they're going to get you somewhere. But
Yeah.
once you're confronted with the experience, it's like, oh, this is what matters.
And you can't really explain the experience in words, can you?
No, it's not well.
Not fully.
Not in a way that gives anybody access to it directly, right?
Other than yourself. You
Right.
had it. You had
Right.
it, and you know it now.
Yeah. She also described how she would get back in touch with it through certain practices of,
Right.
coming back to center, right?
This thing is center.
Yes. Right. Everything else is me spinning out into weirdness, and that's right. So she had different ways of reading and writing and reflecting that would take her. She called it. She had this great phrase like busy, crazy mind, and then she would read something and reflect on it and pray about it, and then she would be back into the program mind, the God-centered mind,
That's right.
the relaxed. And then did it matter that looked like a warrior woman who was loving and caring? No, it didn't. I mean, it's cool, but it didn't need to look that way. What it needed to look like was this return, coming back to a place of like peace and centeredness. And if that happened through writing, then great. If it happened some other way, great. But that's the connection. That's the experience of God that she was looking for.
Absolutely.
Right? That's
perfect. Let's check in with her every once in a while, because I think
that's right.
she's got it. She's got it. She's going in the right direction.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, let's move on a little bit. Writing helps us to phrase, or I added rephrase, prayers that fit our needs.
Sure. Yeah.
Talk about that.
So this is, folks were talking to me about encountering the third step. It says we turned our will and our lives over the care of God as we understood him. A lot of the people I talked to did that through a big book sponsor, who would then tell them, well, here's the third step prayer that's in the big book.
Right.
And if you're not familiar with that prayer, then it has some kind of archaic language in it. The first line is, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Right?
Wilt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it has like a funky, old-timey religious feel to it. It definitely pushes some people's buttons in terms of, oh, that sounds like the religion I've rejected, or oh, that sounds like a way of thinking that I don't want to do anymore. So it kind of makes that less accessible for some people. It's harder for them
certainly less personal.
Absolutely. Right.
Way less personal.
That's like trying to accept someone else's idea of what God should look like, someone else's image.
Right. That's right.
So they told me that they struggle with that, and what they did was they rewrote the prayer.
Sure.
It even suggests that in the big book. It says, the wording was optional, but the sentiment was what was mattered. They would rewrite the prayer in a way that was kind of like what the other lady was doing, with starting from what I really need and what I'm asking this power to do. Right. And so that sometimes those prayers are really short and to the point. I can't stay sober. I need your help. I don't know what to do.
And to go back to last episode, is this an honest prayer? I was working as a chaplain for a while after I retired from running a treatment center, and I used to do a lot of fifth steps with the guys. And this one tough guy, he's getting ready to do his third step, and he says, "Well, should I read it from the book? Should I read it from the book?" I said, "I really wish you wouldn't." And as we get down on our knees, I think there's some power in that too, that I got from the Oxford Group studies. And what he said was, I said, "Put it in your own words." And he said, God, I've really effed up my life. He didn't use the F. Please help me.
Yeah.
Came from the heart.
Yeah.
That
Doesn't
was
need
step
more than
3.
that.
Doesn't
That's
need
right.
more than that.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't even know if he could write, but he got to it. He
Yeah.
got to it and he said it.
Right.
And he said it in front of somebody and he wasn't comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
And
he's on his knees with you too.
He's on his knees.
Yeah.
And it's damn helpful for me to get on my knees with someone like that, because he's probably more in touch with it than I am at that moment of his life.
That's right.
I got things going pretty good in my life,
Yeah.
He's a mess.
Right.
He's a mess. And at some point inside, so am I.
Yeah.
And I gotta stay in touch with that.
And he's your access to that.
He's my access to that. And I'm his access to something else.
Right.
To a little beyond where he is.
Right. Right.
It's possible.
Yeah, there's a real. We might get to stuff like that in when we're talking about writing to help other people.
Yeah.
But there's a real exchange that happens there that's quite powerful.
Yeah, and indescribable.
Yeah.
Just like God is indescribable. What's happening there is it's beyond words.
Yeah, I find,
but it's not beyond experience.
If you told that guy that he was helping, oh, you're helping me more than I'm helping you, they don't believe it.
No.
They don't believe it. If you don't mind, I kind of want to circle around to what you were saying about the 4 absolutes as an image of God.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to talk about it. And some people do use that as a written exercise, which is you take a piece of paper and you divide it into 4 pieces and you write one of the absolutes in each spot.
That was the 4th step. That was the 4th step in the old days.
There you go.
That's how they approached it.
You write the places
everything, James, you know this. Everything kind of filtered through those 4 absolutes. They were the heart and soul, the consciousness of the program that they were trying to affect in people.
And they were not just an inventory method. They were all over the place. They were in the prayer. They were in everything.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But some people do use it as an inventory method even now.
I've used it with people. It's very effective.
Some people see the absolutes and they think that it's like things that I'm supposed to be. Right. Things that I'm supposed to try hard to be like.
Right.
And
which
that's
opens the door to guilt and shame and all that
It's
stuff.
The same old crap.
Same old stuff. That's right.
And it's missing the boat by a mile.
The last interview I did with a woman in Australia who 3rd generation Oxford group, been doing 2-way prayer for 56 years or something.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. And we talked about the 4 absolutes. She says, I call them the 4 freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a light went on.
Uh-huh.
That if you're looking at these as a chain, you're going to get screwed.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at them as a door to free you from self, free you from the bondage of self, open yourself up to love, to honesty, to purity, to unselfishness, then it is freedom.
Right. Right.
Very helpful.
Yeah. I think it's also equally helpful to hear you talk about it as qualities of God or an image of God.
Well, that's where they came from. That's where they came from.
And that means it's something that I'm going to receive.
Right. To put a Christian twist on it, which they had originally.
Sure.
The book was what? The Principles of Jesus.
Yep.
That's where it's found.
Right.
Robert Spear's book.
Yeah.
And he said, well, Jesus was honest, pure, unselfish, loving.
Yeah.
So these are the attributes.
Mm-hmm.
And Bookman in Oxford Group comes along and takes says, well, that's nice. Here's 4 simple ways, to introduce people to transformation.
Right.
Live these.
But not by trying hard to do them.
That's the trick, isn't it?
Not you live them by receiving them.
By relating to them.
The way that you receive, bread and water.
Perfect.
come from outside.
That's right.
They come from somewhere else.
Or they come from the deepest part of you.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's
to me,
another way
that's
of
another
saying
kind
it.
of beyond, right?
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's exactly right. But it is one that I think today people are more receptive to.
Okay. Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they're more receptive to it. That there is within you love. There is within you honesty.
I think that, again, it's tricky though, because if you start thinking that they're in me and you take that to mean I should be able to, then you're going to goof it again. Right?
That's right. And you will. And you will. You will goof it.
So let it be an image of something. Could be within, could be beyond. Those are kind of the same thing.
Well, one expression I love that I came across, the beyond that is within.
Yeah. Right.
The beyond that is within.
Yeah. Let it be that.
The great reality is within.
Yeah.
Big book.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to access. You know? You did theology, you got your mass, you know.
I did.
Yeah, God became man so that man could become God.
Mm.
That'll set some fundamentalists on their.
It's going to bother a lot of people.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Let's talk about two-way prayer.
Okay.
I've
heard of that.
Well, because we're talking about how writing puts you into contact with higher power.
Yes.
And two-way prayer is obviously a great example of that.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too.
It's not the only one. It's not the only one.
No,
but it's a great example of it. Yeah.
Sure. Any kind of writing can be that, and certainly things that are like, directed to higher power, like a prayer or a want to add to higher power or something like that. Prayer, journaling, those are all great.
Any kind of prayer that builds on what you've been talking about for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
This internal thing.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Right.
That's the key. If it builds on that, yeah, I'm with you. Go ahead.
So two-way prayer has this. I mean, you know this better than me, so I should be interviewing you maybe at this point. We might switch hats. But it has this quality of directing us to the beyond within.
That's right.
Right. And
my ego shows up. My ego shows up in the morning.
Yep.
And what it needs to do is park itself over to one side.
Yep.
And allow the within to come up through the pen.
Yep.
Through the pen. That the writing is really helpful in this process.
Right.
I become almost a scribe.
Yes. And so we talked a little bit last time about two-way chair, and we talked about how that has a certain, embodying those things is powerful.
Yes.
But the writing is also helpful for a different reason. It doesn't embody it in the same way, but it leaves a record, helps me remember, helps me look back, kind of gives me a sort of more tangible proof when I start to think maybe I'm just crazy.
Right.
I can say, well, at least I was crazy on the page.
Yeah.
There's a neuroscientist in the UK named Charles Fernyhough, and he wrote this book called The Voices Within.
Yes.
And it's a study of voice hearing in a bunch of different ways that goes from the experience of schizophrenia all the way to the experience of novelists who hear the voices of their characters so they can write dialogue. Right?
Yes.
He talks about, and I'm not a neuroscientist, so I'm not going to be able to name parts of the brain here.
Sure.
But he does talk about a couple of different systems in the brain that are connected. And one is one that helps us imagine the thoughts of others. And another one is the one that lets us represent speech internally. And he talks about how together the interaction of these things creates a thing that he calls the empty slot, or an empty chair, if you will, in the brain.
Right.
So that when you're doing the empty chair work, it's very much like a literalizing of what's happening in your brain, which is generates a thought, it puts it over in this empty slot, and then you're relating to that thought as if it were the thought of another, right? You're able to hold your own thinking or the own processes and examine them in a different way, right?
So imagination and image come from the same root, eh?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The imagination, the imaginal work is that working with images, right? And the same thing is, he says that writing is very helpful with this as well, because it reduces the cognitive load of that empty slot. The page becomes the empty chair in our brains, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so when you're doing two-way prayer, you're able to surface characters, images, figures, and dialogue with them in a way that is hard to do otherwise.
That's right. So I tell people, they struggle with, well, I don't hear anything.
Uh-huh.
I said, well, use your imagination.
Right.
If God were to speak, and he is this loving image that you've just conveyed or identified with, what would love say to you?
Uh-huh.
And then take on that personality as best you can.
Yeah.
And you begin doing it, and it's a little awkward at first because but it's kind of like the old Bataka bat when you're hitting the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, okay, now hit it 10 times, and by the 50th time, you are really pissed, and some anger, rage is coming out of you that was in there, that you've now been able to access. Same thing, I think, with the two-way prayer. That there's love inside of you, there's honesty inside of you, there's another voice.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm a believer that we all have these voices, and the addict, God knows, has a voice that talks to us.
Right.
Wouldn't it be nice? It's been so long. Come on, Bill. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. We're just talking a little. I know that voice. I've dealt with that voice for 50 years. It's real.
Yeah. So I think there's something really powerful here and hard to pin down about I guess I want to say in scare quotes, the reality of the imagination.
Yes.
Right.
Another PhD, James, you're going to have to go for.
I know. But that is, I think people get, when you're saying, oh, I don't hear anything, and you say, oh, well, just imagine. Right. I think some people were resistant to that idea, because we've been so sold on this idea
addict
that, like,
who's resistant. You run into addicts who are resistant, James.
Yeah, sure. The idea that imagination is
the beginning point.
It's kid stuff.
No, it's the beginning point.
Right, but the cultural understanding of it, needs
to change.
Yeah,
needs
right.
Change. It needs to change.
That's what I'm saying. Resistance. It's not just addicts that have this resistance.
No. Scientists as well.
That's right. There's a whole cultural understanding
and church.
It's something you're supposed to grow out of.
Sure, and church is resistant too. It happened 2,000 years ago. It doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
We've got it in a book.
Yeah.
We've nailed it down.
Right. That's what makes imagination so dangerous.
It's dangerous as hell.
Yeah.
For God's sakes, it's dangerous as hell.
Because the images that come are not done.
Are not done. Beautifully said. They're not done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's right. That's right. And is that dangerous? You better believe it. You better believe it's dangerous.
Yeah.
We got God in a box.
Mm-hmm. So this circles back to our first thing about, I came in with a wall up about God because I have a particular image of God that I didn't like.
Right.
Some people come in with a certain wall because they got God in a box. They do not want to let go of that box. Right. And now we've come all the way to the place of, like, the value here, the being in touch that writing, the contact that writing provides is contact with a source of imagination,
And it's dangerous.
a source of images. It's dangerous precisely because it is unsettling
That's
to
right.
those fixed images that we have.
You got it. That's it. That's it. You skip the PhD.
Okay.
You got it, man. You got it. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And this is where you run into the fundamentalism
Yeah.
in the churches and in the big book Nazi kind of approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything you need is in that big book.
Right.
Everything.
Right.
And I'm going to pound it into you.
Right. Right. It's the beginning of all kinds of abuse.
That's right,
Right.
because I'm the interpreter.
Right.
And I
have
think
the
that was
power.
one of the real dangers. I've been reflecting on this. One of the real dangers of two-way prayer. Why didn't it come into AA? I'm writing a book, and this I got to address
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big reasons is people were interpreting James. What came up in my writing this morning about you
Right.
is that you need to go get that PhD.
Right.
All right. Listen to me.
Right.
It's come 4 times,
Mm-hmm.
once in Greek and once in Latin. I mean,
Gotta be
this is
true.
from God.
Right.
This is direct from God. And now you got to do it.
Right. Right.
Well, that's what they were doing, Can't you just see some of these people married to alcoholics in the 1930s? Hey, Charlie,
Yeah.
God said in my writing you need to quit smoking.
Yeah.
That's killing you too, Charlie.
Right. Right.
Well, stop this two-way prayer crap, because I ain't listening to Mildred over there.
Right. Right. That's a really, I mean, have you found, I'd be really curious to know about that dynamic, because I know it wasn't only that.
It wasn't only that.
It was, and the origins was about, my own direction, my own guidance, my own stuff.
Yeah, but watch ego slip in.
Yeah, that's it. That's the killer of everything.
That's the killer every time.
Yeah, yeah.
Every single time. That's it. And that's what I still want you to research that. The only thing more dangerous than religion is no religion. That this is dangerous stuff. Robert Johnson had a lovely expression that, in modern age, God is out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
We had him in the box. This is the medieval mind.
Yep.
And I kind of grew up with that. I grew up Catholic, and
right.
My pathology is a little bit different than your pathology by way of experience. But everything was nice and orderly. God was in the box.
Yep.
The priest had the key to the box.
Right.
We would have devotions on certain nights when the box would be opened, the God would be let out. The priest had to have a cape around. This is so fascinating.
Yeah.
When he would lift up the host for adoration, and all of this gets distorted. I know that. I mean, don't get mad at me, you Catholics out there. It's just what we got to think through again. But he would have a cape on to protect him, because the power of this thing was so huge.
Yeah.
And I, as a little altar boy, would then ring the bell or use the incense or do all of this sort of stuff. And then it would be put back into the box.
Right.
That's kind of the medieval mind.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's a wonderful image for that, because everything's in its place, but it doesn't work anymore.
No.
And so his expression is God's out of the box.
Yeah, I don't want God to just be in a box that we take out once a week. I'm going to need him more often than that.
Yeah, we go to daily communion. And
okay, that's right.
And I did that, and I would always line up last to drink the cup, of wine. And I had an old priest pull me aside one day and say this. He said, "Bill, I can't help but notice that your devotion to the blood of Christ far, far exceeds your devotion to the body of Christ." Zap! Another alcoholic snagged.
Right.
But that's the thing. Here's I think it was what's his name, Smith. That there are 2 dangerous directions that you can go in religion. the Catholic end can go towards worshiping bread.
Yeah.
That's a danger. And
Yeah.
it's not what it's about. And
Right.
the Protestant can go towards worshiping the book.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So you got to watch either way.
Both are literalisms.
Both are literalisms. That's right.
They're sapping the imagination out of it.
And the life out of it.
Yeah. There's
the interaction with what's there. What is in the book? Because that's really important. What is in the bread? Because that's really important.
Right.
You know,
right.
so it's the place of ritual, which we have lost, and it's the place of communion. I mean, in the deepest sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can do that,
communion is contact. It's a synonym for contact, right?
Absolutely.
And if you're just worshiping the bread,
right? Then you've missed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's contact everywhere.
Yeah.
But this is a way, and this I think is good theology. I think so. I'll get emails if it's not. But it's a way to focus your attention in a particular way. It's almost like a magnifying glass. You could take the sun. I used to do this as a kid. You know, you'd burn holes in paper by channeling that power through the magnifying glass onto the paper.
Yeah.
If you were not healthy, you do it with ants and bugs and all sorts of other critters. Another story. But that's what it's about. If I can see it there, then can I expand it beyond it?
Yeah. I would add to that, I would say it's not just about focusing the attention, but also focusing the imagination.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What you have to bring to it.
Yeah. There's I was been reading this book called More Than Real, which is a study of philosophies of imagination in Southeast India between some number of years ago. I don't remember the phrase. But in it, he talks about Vedic ritual practices where certain number of people would be doing the ritual, and then somebody would be set aside sitting and imagining the ritual.
Yes, nice.
In great detail, right? So everything that everyone was doing, this guy is over here with his eyes closed, imagining exactly that. And without him, it's not going to work. The function is lost. Right? If you just have the literal body movements and stuff, and you don't have the imaginal connection, then what are you doing? Right?
That's right.
You have to have the vitality of the connection to the imaginal realm. And that's also true when we write, right? We can literalize. We talked about this before. Why isn't writing working? Because we've literalized our connection to, we just have to fill up these pages and then we'll be okay.
Right.
It's just about producing notebooks full of stuff, right?
Right.
And we've lost what it's supposed, the connection to the source.
Is there some of that, I'm going to get some more emails on this one. Is there some of that with the artist's way?
The Julia Cameron stuff?
Julia Cameron, that you just sit there and write. You must fill X number of pages.
Right.
But what you're saying is there connection?
Right.
The imaginal realm, the transcendent realm.
Yeah.
We must be connected to this.
To the images that are not done, right?
I love that expression. The images that are not done.
Those things can show up in morning pages.
Yeah.
It can happen, right?
I think it does happen.
Yeah.
I suspect it does happen.
Yeah. So I don't know, but if you're just, I don't know, is it possible to do morning pages where you're just like, I'm going to say the word cheese 50 times and just get 3 pages done and that's it? It's just about the pages. Maybe. Like, I think it could be dead. I think it could be anything. Well, like you said, the ego comes in, anything can die, right?
That's right. Yeah, we can kill anything.
Yeah.
And we better kill this episode because we didn't get very far. We went down a couple of rabbit holes, but I like going rabbit hunting with you, James.
It's fun.
It's a lot of fun. And I think we're going to do one more episode on connecting with the higher power.
Okay, sure.
There's more to be said there,
Mhm.
and I don't want to give it, I want to give it its due. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So
sure.
we will pick that up next time.
Sounds
Pick it
good.
up from there.
Sounds
Pick it
good.
up
Looking
from
forward
there.
to it.
So I thank you, James, for sharing stories and insights with us. And I thank you guys for listening. And if we pissed a few of you off, that's okay. We want to hear from you. Write. You see, you have to write
That's
now
right.
and express those thoughts
That's right.
and send them to James or send them to me or send them to your sponsor. It doesn't really matter. It's in the writing that you're going to benefit. So, hey, Bill Wilson hated Roosevelt. He hated Roosevelt, and he used to write all sorts of terrible letters to him. I haven't seen any, but I'd love to get a hold of a few.
That would be fun, yeah.
It would be fun. We'll do a series on that. Okay, James, thanks
Bye,
much.
Bill.
You guys,
Yep.
thanks for listening. God bless, and keep coming back.